from the Pacific Islands 5 days before this incident happened. I had travelled to Esperance to do my specialist clinic, and on the 24th of October, Friday morning, I was returning from Esperance after the clinics back to Kalgoorlie. As I started the journey at about 9:30 in the morning, I had discomfort in my chest. I thought it was probably just gastric trouble, and so I continued to drive on till I reached Kambalda, which is about 350 kilometers. The pain hadn't gotten any worse, it was just a discomfort, but I started to feel hot and sweaty. So I stopped on the side of the road and decided to call my wife Sherry. I told her about what was going on. She said, "How do you feel?" I said, "Well, I don't feel too bad." So she said, "Why don't you continue to drive on to Kalgoorlie?" I said, "Okay, I'll decide on the way."
The one, but I know it was true. 'Twas only because of you.
As I was driving into Kambalda, I felt very strongly in my heart that I need to get to the clinic in Kambalda. So I drove up to the GP surgery in Kambalda. It's only a very small surgery, and it was about lunchtime, so the doctor was actually out to lunch. I asked the nurse who was there, "Can I please have an ECG done? I'm Dr. George and I'm having a bit of chest pain." So she said, "Yeah, no worries, come in," and we got the ECG done. As soon as the ECG was done, they actually handed me the ECG because I'm the one who manages all the heart attacks in Kalgoorlie. So they gave me the ECG and I took one look at it and said, "Oh my God, I'm having a heart attack." And I said, "Call the GP please, I'm having a heart attack, give me the following medications." They said, "Don't worry, just relax, we'll get the GP." So Dr. Rao, who's a good friend of mine, he actually came in and he said, "Come on Sean, you're only 39. You can't be having a heart attack." I said, "Rao, I'm having a heart attack. Please give me these medications." I even asked him for morphine because by then the pain had got quite severe. He said, "Sean, come on, let's go into the next room. Let us repeat the ECG." I remember lying down in that bed and thinking to myself, this is not looking good at all. I looked at the cardiac monitor and I found that my heart rate had gone up significantly and my blood pressure was shooting up as well. And that was it. Just 11 minutes after the first ECG, I went into a complete cardiac arrest.
Here I give you my soul tonight. I love you, Lord, please come to me.
Dr. Rao, the nursing staff, my intern, they were horrified with what had just happened. The last thing they expected was for me to go into cardiac arrest. They immediately connected me to a defibrillator and started CPR. They would have done CPR for well over 55 minutes. And the defibrillator machine was an automatic one and it actually advised that I should be given electrical shocks. I was in a cardiac rhythm called ventricular fibrillation. And this is one of the cardiac rhythms that you can actually deliver electrical shocks for. And they actually ended up giving me 13 electrical shocks, and they would have done CPR for well over 55 minutes. Normally, we wouldn't continue CPR for more than, say, 10 to 15 minutes, because by then the brain would be normally dead. Well, I think the reason they would have continued for longer was because I was their colleague, and they knew that my wife was by then on the way to Kambalda, and it would take her about an hour to reach there.
When I spoke to him, he said that they had just done an ECG and they had found out that he had a heart attack, and I was really shocked that he even had a heart attack. And maybe 10 minutes from that phone call, we get a call to say that he's had a cardiac arrest. And anyway, we decided to drive down to Kambalda, and in the meantime I had messaged my dad and I told my father that I was going to collect a dead body because it was already more than 20 minutes when I spoke to my dad. And I still remember his response was, he was crying and he said, "That's not possible, Sean has just come back from a mission trip, he's done so much for the Lord, you just go there and pray. And in my mind, all I could think was, there is nothing that I can do, and here I was going to collect a dead body. And I was thinking, what am I going to tell my son? Because how am I going to break the news to him that his dad is dead?
I got contacted by the medical administrator at Kalgoorlie Hospital to say that Sean was having a heart attack, and then a little bit later to say that he had a cardiac arrest, and that they were doing CPR. And he asked me if I'd drive to Kambalda. I didn't want to go. I said there wasn't any point. I heard the story, and I said, look, he's dead. I'm going to organise 2 last cycles of CPR. I'm going to give 2 really huge doses of adrenaline, 5 times normal. But I was really doing it to prove to the people in the room that he was dead.
So as I walked into the room, Dr. Steve Dungy, the emergency physician, he came up to me, and I was introduced to Steve by another doctor, and Steve just said, Sherry, I'm sorry, Sean's dead. He's gone. You can take 2 minutes to say goodbye to him. And in the back of my mind, I remembered what my father said, and I thought, there's no harm in praying, is there? Anyway, he's dead, but I can still pray and hope for a miracle. So I just held Sean's hand, which was cold as ice, and I just said a very, very simple prayer. I said, Lord, Sean's only 39, I'm only 38, we only have a 10-year-old boy, I need a miracle. That's all I prayed. And when I finished saying that, there was a lot of commotion in the room. I thought, oh, maybe I'm just imagining, because, in my heart I hoped that I would really see a miracle and that my husband would come back to life.
After my wife prayed and I came back to life after being dead for 1 hour and 25 minutes, they decided to shift me to Kalgoorlie Hospital. They were not sure that I would even make it in the ambulance, but I arrived at Kalgoorlie Hospital deeply unconscious on a ventilator, and I understand that they then gave me a clot-busting drug and transferred me to Royal Perth Hospital.
No, it's not. He knows what you can bear.
In Royal Perth, I was taken to the cath lab, and they found that I had a block in my right coronary artery, and they put in a stent and put me on a balloon pump and shifted me to the Royal Perth Hospital ICU. I was in that ICU the whole of Saturday. They didn't expect me to survive at all, but I actually survived. And Sunday morning, you should have a look at the picture of this. It was taken by my friend Morris Crook, who came to visit me. No one expected me to survive. My wife actually got a phone call from a lady who had been praying for me, saying I would open my eyes on Sunday night. And that's what I did. In fact, the registrar refused to come and even look at me, saying, "You're a man. He cannot open his eyes. He was dead for such a long time. His brain would be completely dead." And it was true. My liver was completely damaged. My kidneys had failed. So why would my brain work at all? But by Monday morning, I think he realized that I was not a textbook case, because I had started to move my hands, my legs, and by Tuesday, they were actually able to see more movements out of me. And Wednesday, they actually removed the tube from my throat, and I actually started to speak with my memory perfectly intact. In fact, I asked the nurse, "Can I have a look at my ECG and my ABG?" And she nearly collapsed. My brain was 100% normal. Now, this is medically impossible. For a man who was dead for 1 hour and 25 minutes, 48 minutes in ventricular fibrillation, and 37 minutes of asystole, this was just not possible.
My very strong feeling when I first got involved in the case was that Sean was dead. There had been a prolonged cardiac arrest. Normally within about 5 or 6 minutes you start to see a decline, in people's brain function, even if you get them back. So the damage to the brain is pretty rapid. I mean, the truth is that if somebody comes in cardiac arrest and they have asystole, which means the heart's not beating at all, that rhythm normally just means the person's dead. And to be honest, we often wouldn't persist beyond 5 or 10 minutes under those circumstances. Just because we know that there's no meaningful chance of survivors, you don't get people back who've been in asystole for a long period of time. He was very sick. Even when he got heartbeat back, I wasn't sure that it would be sustained. He needed very large doses of adrenaline by me to keep things going. But the most surprising thing of all is that he actually survived with an intact brain. That is truly extraordinary.
But I kept telling myself, there is a way, God is going to shine through, and yeah, that's all I can say. I saw a miracle and God answered my prayer.
I have seen lots and lots of extraordinary things. I think this is the most extraordinary thing I've seen in a practice that's been running for nearly 30 years. I've presented this case at an international meeting in Japan and a national meeting up north in Broome, and without fail I can present this to people who are experienced immersions physicians, and every single person is staggered at the story.
God indeed did this as a miracle.
As an incense, it goes up to His presence, a sweet fragrance that tells Him all I need. He is waiting to hear our sweet voices, to ask Him before we make our choices.